Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
It's Monday. We're back at it. Another day here in the life. Welcome to the show, everybody. Jeff Waldorf, Round the Nation here, Waldorf Nation. We got a brand new week full of exciting and disastrous stories, including CPAC today. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We got Mike Pillow, of course, very, very angry at reporters. I'm going to talk about why. We have Candace Owens talking about bear sex. Okay, interesting. That's also at CPAC. We have Lauren Boebert saying that, you know what, just like in Ukraine, we should be exporting freedom to Canadians and also Mexico and also in the United States. Very strange stuff going on here. We got actually a good critique here from MSNBC. That's MSNBC's Mehdi Hassan talking about how some mainstream media reporters are reacting to the situation in Ukraine and why suddenly it's incredibly important news for Western media. Not to say that it's not important, but we'll save that. We'll get to that criticism because I think it's excellent. So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, Stand Your Ground in Florida. We got a case of Stand Your Ground in Florida where turns out we got another person shooting another person over something ridiculous. And so I'm going to break down that case. All right, so why don't we get into it? Yes, you heard that right. Bear sex. Oh, boy. So, all right, before we go and get into the show, please like and share the stream. Very important that you do so. Very helps out greatly. Let's see, I'm going to take a little time off cooking for the nation. Hope you all understand. Definitely. Totally understand. All right, so that said, let's do it. Let's start out with some fun Mike Pillow. Of course, Mike Pillow up to his usual Mike Pillow tricks. Let me just get organized here.
God gave me this platform. I already know I'm going to win. China did our vote. Biden and Harris would say, hey, we're here to protect the country, and resign. Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't.
Just forget about the evidence. This was attacked
this weekend, Mike Pillow, CEO of MyPillow, Mike Lindell, was at CPAC. And look, I talked about how earlier he had mixed it up with a reporter from, I believe it was CBS News. This time, he was again on video, mixing it up with a reporter from Vice. Let's take a look at that insanity.
You journalists are the biggest rottenness. You ask about why don't you ask about Dominion? You want to talk about Dominion and Smart Man? Why don't you guys go after them? Why do you about Dominion? They're the biggest crime families. Dominion, Smartmatic, ES&S, Hart, Diebold. They used China, attacked our country, took your country you say you're part of, and you don't give a dang about it.
I care, of course I care.
No, you don't. Then why do you appeal? No, really. Then why are you attacking me instead of Dominion?
How have I attacked you? I've asked you.
Ask me something about some Q. Don't you have bigger things in the news?
No, you're asking me questions about Q. Yeah, and what about it? What about it? But I love this, right? So, don't you have anything else to report on? Yeah, but I'm here at CPAC, and you're literally out there spreading election propaganda. And so, yes, I would like to ask you questions about the thing that you were talking about, that you are on a crusade about. Yes, sure. And so, and maybe your connections to QAnon. But I loved it, right? And so, look, the reaction here, the Chinese, the Iranians, the Pomeranians, they use the voting machines, you don't even care. You don't even care. Okay, well, look, if I were the reporter, I know. If I were the reporter, I would ask, okay, well, look, if you're asking me about whether or not I care about my country getting attacked, all right, well, did you care when people attacked the Capitol on January 6th? I mean, it's a fair question, right? Totally fair question. Hey, did you care when people broke into the Capitol, beat up police officers, shit on the floors, and smeared it around, and stole stuff from Nancy Pelosi's and other people's offices? Did you care when they chanted, "Hang Mike Pence"? Did you care at all? Was the vice president at the time? Did you care at all about an actual real attack on this country as opposed to your fictional attack that you keep coming up with? I mean, seriously. No. But he has the gall to go and ask a reporter whether or not he cares about his ridiculous conspiracy theories. Now, look, the reality is that conspiracy theory was used by people in January 6th. This election fraud insanity, right, was used to justify their attack in order to help them, and specifically Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, and the rest of them, to try to steal the election. Now, their plan called for Mike Pence. Pence did not do it. He did not decertify the election or refuse to certify the election, which, by the way, is a ceremonial role only, and wouldn't actually have done anything, wouldn't have returned power to Donald Trump. And so, nonetheless, they don't really care. The right, that's why the right hates Mike Pence. That's why they were calling for him to be hung. That's why Trump continues to call Mike Pence a coward. And so, now look, I understand in that crowd, by the way. I mean, speaking of angry crowds, right? Well, you're in the middle of CPAC. So if you're that reporter, I can understand why he didn't ask that question, why he didn't push back, why, anything like that. Was just like, hey, look, calm down. I didn't attack you or anything like that. I'm just asking questions. It's literally my job. It's because he had a mob of people. Again, this is CPAC, not exactly a friendly audience. All right. And so I can understand, once again, why he did not say what I would have said or push back at all. And I guess it's really easy to armchair quarterback if you're not in that situation. But speaking, of course, the Trump supporters, speaking, of course, when it comes to the crowd around him, look, that crowd filled with insanity. The entire CPAC conference filled with just nonstop conspiracy theories, which is essentially what they have left. But getting back to Mike Lindell here, I've got another video that I want to show you, and that's Mike giving more suggestions into what a journalist should actually talk about. Take a look.
Why don't you ask me about the helicopter? Why don't you ask me about the parachutes that are going into Canada right now with pillows? With pillows. Remember that? That was your other buddies from the Daily Beast.
Where's the parachutes? What parachutes?
But then you don't read the news, right? You guys
I don't read whatever news you're talking about.
What news do you read? Your own news place? You guys are a horrible, horrible, horrible outlet. You're traitors to the United States of America.
So just to be clear, you're attacking me. I'm asking you questions.
You came up to me. I was taking pictures with these great people. You come up to me. In this country that's a journalist now. Okay. Journalism has left our country. If you'd sit here, why don't you ask me about the evidence, like the president just said, in Georgia, 242 people, ballot harvested, felonies. It just came out. Why don't you talk about the decertification of Arizona?
Wow. And look, the crowd, they just ate it up. This is what happens when Lindell is emboldened by fellow crazy people. Then he gets emboldened to sprout off his nonsense. And so I love, by the way, how this, what they asked, what Lindell had asked him about, like, oh, what did we talk about the pillows? So, okay, what do you want to talk about? What pillow drop? What pillow drop? Oh, you don't follow the news? Well, I report on the news. But I didn't hear about the pillows. You know why? Because it didn't actually happen. The pillow didn't happen. The pillow drop. Okay? Yes, that was this whole insane plan to airdrop Mike Pillow, pillows from a helicopter to the Canadian truckers. Now, there were several reasons that didn't happen. For one, they tried to drive them in. Well, they got stopped at the border. Why? Well, they didn't show proof of vaccination, and they didn't have a negative PCR test. That's the rules. To get into Canada, a sovereign country, you have to present one of those two things. So they got turned back. And so they got this harebrained idea of taking these pillows and dropping them from a freaking helicopter. Oh, okay. Yeah, fun. Except, of course, it's even harder, even more difficult to get a helicopter into the air and fly it over another sovereign country, without getting some pre-clearance, without getting cleared, without getting, consulting with the air traffic control, and of course, getting permission to come over the border. For these people, they're always complaining about border security. Border, we got to have a border. They don't seem to care too much about going over other people's borders. In this case, with a gigantic load of pillows, which then they were going to drop. But you remember, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the teeny tiny little parachutes that it was supposed to be on. Teeny tiny parachutes. Yeah, of course. But again, here's the thing. The whole idea of delivering pillows was a stunt. In my opinion, it definitely a stunt. All they had to do was, again, show one of two things, negative PCR. That's just getting tested for COVID. The very minimum that you can do. Okay? Now, of course, when they got turned back, that provided fuel for them to the fires of them being able to claim that they are victimized. Oh, I can't believe the Canadian government. Fascism! Oh, they wouldn't let me in. No, fascism, blah, blah, blah. It's the anger. So everything there is set up to make old Mikey look like a victim. No, you're attacking me. You're attacking me by asking questions about things that I've said. Yes. Well, why didn't you talk about this and this and that? Why don't you talk about, why don't you ask me about the things that I want to talk about? And if you don't, you're a bad journalist. You're a bad journalist. But you're a traitor too. You're a traitor to America. Yeah, yellow journalism. Yeah, it's so bad. All right, you know what? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Arizona decertification. I've been waiting to talk about this. Oh, and I have talked about it before, by the way. So what about the Arizona decertification? Oh, right. It didn't happen. But there was an attempt at it. Yes. In fact, Arizona State Representative Mark Fincham, who is a Trump-backed candidate, he's running for Secretary of State in Arizona, proposed a resolution that would decertify the election result from 3 different counties. That's it. 3 counties. Now, there is no process under current law, Arizona law or federal law, to decertify an election. It just doesn't, it's just not there. It doesn't exist. Rick Hassan, an election law professor at University of California, Irvine, backs that up, saying that the argument is just not legally sound. The Arizona legislature had the right under Article 2 of the Constitution to set the manner for choosing presidential electors. It gave that right to Arizona's voters with no power to decertify the results afterwards, whatever that means. Yeah, and that was the question. What does decertify actually mean? Oh, we're just going to back it up and uncertify it with no constitutional remedies? Nothing? Nothing, because there's nothing. The process is over. The election is over. Okay, so he brings back ballot harvesting, right? So there's this whole thing, and the nefarious ballot harvesting. They're harvesting the ballots, and it sounds bad because harvesting is bad for some reason. Okay, now in Georgia there is an investigation. Oh no, are they onto something? Well, there's a right-wing group called True the Vote that says, well, we need you to look into that ballot harvesting because we think that that people have improperly handled ballots. So they complain, and the state's like, all right, we'll look into it. Now, the group claims that it has footage of people collecting and delivering ballots, as well as an interview with an unnamed rando who claims that he was paid thousands of dollars to collect and submit ballots during the election. Yeah, yes, we're going to take rando guy at his word. Yes, of course. Yes. Now, according to a January 4th report from Just the News, a site that has previously shared misinformation about Georgia's 2020 election, the article notes that True the Vote does not allege the ballots delivered by couriers were fraudulent. So basically, their entire case is, well, gee, there's harvesting of ballots, and we don't like the fact that somebody else had handled the ballot, and so the state of Georgia, we kind of made it illegal to do the harvesting to actually come up and pick the ballots up for other people. We don't like the fact that somebody else can do that. Oh, okay. Well, was that it? Now, does that make the ballots invalid at all? Does that prove election fraud? The fact that somebody else just picked up the ballots and dropped them off for someone else? No, it doesn't prove election fraud at all. In fact, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican who, again, is against ballot harvesting, he said this: ballot harvesting, look, those are still legal, lawful ballots. They've just been handled fraudulently, meaning you gave the ballot to somebody else, and we didn't like it that you gave it to somebody else to turn it in. We would rather you do it yourself. Now, ballot harvesting, the thing about that is that it actually makes voting easier. If you designate someone to pick up ballots from, for example, heavily minority areas, from people maybe who are poor, or people who are, constantly work all the time, or, who don't have reliable transportation, things like that, well, that would make sense, right? That would make sense. Like, okay, yes, designate someone to pick up ballots from these places that normally, either have, and by the way, the African-American community, especially in Georgia, has had to face longer and longer lines due to, situations where they have reduced the number of polling places and done other forms of voter suppression to make sure that black people were not able to turn out in as high of numbers. Now, during this election, of course, people were bound and determined to show up because this was a referendum on Donald Trump. And so that's why they didn't like that. They said, oh, crap, too many people showed up. So now we need to make it even harder to try to discourage people from turning out in these elections. And so that's what's going on here, okay? Now, by the way, Raffensperger also told the National Desk, quote, many states actually allow ballot harvesting. We outlawed it because we think the only person that should touch the ballot is the voter and the election worker, and there shouldn't be any people or intermediaries in between. It still counts. Ballot harvested still counts. And so they just don't like it. No fraud. Just, I don't like it. I don't like making it easy for, elderly and disabled people to be able to have their ballot picked up by somebody else and turned in. We just don't like it at all. No. Look, all this, it's election fraud, Donald Trump won 2020, it's all a pipe dream. It's 2022. Like, let it go. Let it go, Mike. For God's sakes, let it go. Just let it go. It's obsessive. I know for Mike Pillow, I understand that it's, very, very difficult now to find a new grift. But you might want to start looking real quick, because you're going to need a lot of money real fast after Dominion comes for you. Okay, moving on. Oop, that's not it. Here we go. Ballot harvesting is not fraud. These people have a right to vote. Oh, I agree. But Republicans, remember, they want to make sure that it's incredibly difficult to vote. Because when less people vote, they happen to have a better chance at winning elections. Who knew? All right. Anyway, let's move on. Let's go to Candace Owens talking about bear sex. Candace Owens was at CPAC, and she decided during her speech to talk about bear sex.
In the wild, male bears actually kill their cubs. So the reason that hunters will seek out male bears and hunt them is because they're trying to preserve the bear population in certain areas. And let me explain that, because it's a weird thing to comprehend, that male bears are not only committing infanticide, but they're also committing cannibalism sometimes. They actually will eat their cubs. So the question is why? Well, similar to the human species, when female bears give birth and are nursing their cubs, they cannot go into heat. But, and this is what the papa bears have worked out, if a nursing mother loses her cubs, the lactation will stop and she will once again become receptive to breeding. So male bears kill their cubs for sex, really, is what it comes down to.
Okay then. Well, that went in an interesting direction. Props to her for learning things about the natural world. But I don't think this is something that most people don't already know. Honestly, you don't have to be a nature expert to know that you probably shouldn't mess with bears or wild animals or, their offspring. And that, yes, there are situations where male bears or even male animals will kill offspring or other animals' offspring in order to have a chance at procreation. And so, yes, interesting stuff, right? And by the way, some of the reasons aren't just about sex, but of course it depends on food. And of course, as I mentioned, finding a suitable mate. Now, the big question here about this entire thing is, and what's the point? Why are we talking about bear sex? What is going on? Look, I don't think I have to remind anybody watching that we are not bears. I can guarantee you that I am not a bear in a human suit. by the way, I couldn't bear it if anybody believed that. And yes, I am making bad puns. It's almost like they're unbearable. Okay, anyway, that was her attempt at building up how, like the mama bear, conservatives should be springing up to protect their kids from the scourge of facts and science. Ah, yes. In fact, there was one part of her speech where she actually railed against kids wearing masks, and of course the idea of younger people especially getting vaccines, or anyone getting vaccines. And by the way, she called it in one part, quote unquote, Fauci science and Bill Gates science, which elicited an audible boo from the crowd. Let me just say that there are no such things as Fauci or Bill Gates science. Science is science. Science is a process, not a result. I'm just saying that. And so now, to further, I guess, get the analogy here that she's trying to draw. Now she says, like, look, we got the bears and the bears and they're doing the sex and everything, and we need to be more mama bears to protect our children in the classroom from evil facts. And that the reason that we're in such a predicament nowadays is because of feminism. Take a look.
You see, in my mind, I believe that the state began assuming control over our households through a very successful campaign that began with radical feminism in the 1970s, which said to women, don't stay at home. Go be like a man. Go to work. Why would you want to stay in the kitchen? Don't make him a sandwich. These ideas that were quietly and subliminally planted into even my mind in the public school system. If you want to be successful, success is not marriage, success is not children, success is climbing the corporate ladder like men. That is the only way to achieve equality. What a wonderful opportunity that represented for the state. Because in mother's absence, the Department of Education began raising our children. And today, we are reeling from the aftermath of that custodial transfer.
Okay. So the feminisms. See, we got the feminisms that are going on, and that's why the state's taken over. And they're teaching our kids factual information. Oh, yes. So, hey, my question is, okay, Candace, why aren't you in the kitchen? I mean, if you think that the problem is mothers are no longer in the kitchen and are no longer being traditional wives, well, then why are you out here speaking at CPAC telling men and women what to think? Those aren't my rules. Those are your rules. I mean, hey, look, if a woman belongs in the home, get your ass back in the house and stop telling other women and men what to do. Take your own advice, shut up, and go make your husband a sandwich. If that's what you really want, if that's what you want everyone to do, why don't you do it yourself? Why don't you do it yourself? Hey, look, if you want to be a traditional stay-at-home wife, do you. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't care. That's your choice if you want to do that. But don't tell everyone else to do it. Look, I'll even help you, by the way. I know some policy prescriptions that would help it easier for women to be stay-at-home moms. In fact, how about we make sure that everybody working has a living wage? Huh? How about we work to lower rent and mortgage? Maybe put a cap on some of that stuff. How about you the government offer free health insurance for everyone, so that people don't have to spend all their money on healthcare, and so that the mothers can stay home and still have healthcare and still be covered. How about that? How about that? You know how many American families that would help? How many women that would help? I mean, look, if your solution is, hey, I want more women to stay home with the kids and raise families, and again, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to do that. Okay, why don't we make it easier for you to do so without it financially destroying your household? How about that? How about that? Free healthcare. Do you know how many families get broken up all the time, that couples that get divorced because of medical bankruptcies? A lot. Illness, medical bills, cancer. Yeah, plenty of families get broke up by this. You want more families? You want to help families? Push good policy. push, child tax credits. That's something the Republican Party despises, child tax credits, all right? They're not at all, they don't care at all about this, about helping actual families. But instead, you see what Candace Owens is doing. She's pushing culture war crap and not pushing any sort of policies. Does the Republican Party have any policies that actually help families to have financial security? No, not at all. Not at all. That's why this whole thing, this entire thing is a fucking grift. Right-wingers don't care about families. They don't care about babies. They say they care about babies. No, they don't care about babies at all. No, they only want to control your uterus. They only want to control women. And now they want to control what the kids learn in school. Mainly, they don't want kids learning factual information like history and science. That's it. That's what this is all about. In reality, what they're doing, what the Republican Party is doing now in going after school boards, in going after facts and information, they're doing way more damage to the children than what they say the mask mandates in school are doing. We already have a failure of preparing kids for the real world. We hardly prepare them for college. And we certainly do not prepare them, if they don't choose to go to college, for the working world. Are there any classes on how to do your taxes? No. Where are the classes on media literacy? That would be super important. Or how about classes on economics that aren't just recycled supply side bullshit? Come on. No. Ridiculous. This entire thing, which is all of CPAC, was basically, look at the left. It's taking over education. We have to fight back. We got to be the mama bears and the bear sex and the cannibalism and something. Cancel culture bad. That's it. No. There are no actual economic policies put forward by the Republican Party to help regular working people to achieve the ideal of, in their own ideal, of having the mother being able to stay home with the kids. In fact, what they really want and what it's going to end up being, in their future, they ban abortion, just a woman staying home, barefoot and pregnant, once again, while the man struggles like hell to be able to make, the rent and food, whatever, and having absolutely no benefits to be able to rely on for that. No, it's ridiculous. Okay. Barefoot. Oh, see, you get it. You get it. The bear puns are great. Thank you. All right. Male bears killing cubs is rare. Mama bear will defend her cubs with her life. She doesn't mess around with horny males. Yeah, and generally, and I didn't mention this, but generally it's quite rare that they kill their own cubs. I think it was, a third of all deaths, or what is it, two-thirds of all deaths of cubs are actually from competing males. So, but anyway, I didn't think I had to go that far into it to show how utterly unbearable Candace Owens is. Okay. I had to. Sorry. Well, let's go to Lauren Boebert, huh? Representative Lauren Boebert thinks the situation inside of the United States and Canada is comparable to what's going on in Ukraine, with them being literally invaded by the Russian army. Take a look.
I pray for Ukraine, and I wish them the best. They have a great president right now who's really said clearly, live free or die. He said, I don't need a ride. Give me ammunition. The fight is right here. But we also have neighbors to the north who need freedom and need to be liberated, and we need that right here at home as well.
And neighbors to our south.
And neighbors to our south, too. By the way, we don't just need to liberate Canada, but we also need to liberate the United States and Mexico. Let's just throw in Mexico for the hat trick. Oh, great. All right. Fun. These people are bad people. Holy crap. Literally, the Ukrainian people are being bombed and invaded by the Russian army. That's not happening in Canada. For as far as I know, that's not happening in Canada. And it's not happening in Mexico. It's not happening here. Whereas, 2,000 people a day actually are dying in the United States from what? From what? COVID. Unvaccinated Americans, by the way. But she defends the Canadian anti-vax truckers and, of course, the ones that have popped up here that are not doing very well because there are no mandates to fight against. But that's what they're doing. That, if they didn't have a vax mandate, then there are certain amount of truckers that will go, no, we're not going to go and get vaccinated. And then, of course, you're going to end up having people that are dying from COVID. But anyway, her argument is even worse. How could it be worse? Well, again, she's feigning to like the Ukrainian president. She said, I pray for Ukraine. I wish them the best. They have a great president, President Zelensky. Now, here's the thing. You go back to 2019, Republicans didn't have as much of a good, favorable opinion of President Zelensky and Ukraine. In fact, they seem to have, changed their tune on Ukrainian corruption. Remember how this was a gigantic thing here? Look at all this Ukrainian corruption. There's so much corruption in Ukraine. Look at Hunter Biden. Look at Hunter Biden's laptop. Burisma. We got Burisma. But then we got the perfect phone call from Donald Trump. Now, here's the thing. So Trump tried to withhold defense funding from Ukraine. You remember that? Now, the condition for that from Donald Trump was, okay, we'll give you the defense funding if you say that you had and we're launching an investigation into Burisma and Hunter Biden before an election. Now, look, Vladimir Zelensky didn't do that. He's like, look, I want to go, I'd like to have a meeting with the White House, with the U.S. president, and, we'll talk about these things, but I'm not going to go and do an investigation today. Maybe we'll look into it, etc. But we really need that defense funding. And, of course, with the power of hindsight, they did actually need that funding. They did. Because they ended up getting invaded by Russia. But anyway, that money did go through because it was already approved by Congress. But Republicans, again, their entire narrative was the government in Ukraine is so incredibly corrupt. I can't believe they're so corrupt. And it's Joe Biden, and it's Hunter's laptop, and it was the Ukrainians that meddled in the election in 2016, and that's why we're talking about the corruption here. Again, Donald Trump, during the impeachment trial, literally claimed that it was the Ukrainian government that had meddled in the election to help Hillary Clinton. Fascinating. And that it was Ukraine that framed Russia for the DNC hacks and coordinated with the Democrats in order to smear Donald Trump. Isn't that weird? That same government that they were so against, that was smearing Donald Trump and attacking him and all that stuff. Well, now, no, he's got the great president since Boebert. We're going to defend Ukraine. We care so much about the Ukrainian people. Oh, really? Oh, but there's more. There's receipts. The U.S. intelligence assessment blaming Russia, according to the right wing, was written by anti-Trumpers, whose conclusions could not be trusted. The Republican Party, of course, bought into that narrative. They defended holding back the military aid. They openly admitted it. In fact, here you had Trump's then Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney. Here's what he said. This was during an October 17th White House briefing. Quote, he told reporters the conspiracy about the Ukrainian server was why we held up the money. He said there was nothing wrong with Trump's quid pro quo or attempt with Vladimir Zelensky. We do that all the time with foreign policy, he said. I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be a political influence in foreign policy. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany also belittled Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who reported this, who testified to Trump's behavior and was fired in retaliation as a former junior employee. Other Trump aides joined in smearing in the Ukrainian-born National Security Council expert. Then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said it was laughable to think this is anywhere close to an impeachable offense, withholding that defense money. And so, look, when you look back at what's going on in Ukraine, where they're struggling to hold back the Russian military, yes, they needed the money. Donald Trump was willing to deny them that aid unless they backed his insane conspiracy theories. And of course, you had the rest of the Republican Party that were doing the same thing, that were supporting him. Weird. Now, by the way, the Republican Party overwhelmingly backed Russia and smeared the Ukrainian government, again, as incredibly corrupt. And yet now they are coming out and saying, oh no, we backed Ukraine. Solidarity, everybody. And by the way, not only solidarity with Ukraine, but also we should liberate ourselves and Canada and Mexico, just like Ukraine. But that's not even close with the situation that's going on. Ukraine is a sovereign country that's been invaded by Putin and the military. This is not the same thing. And by the way, it's incredibly gross and disgusting to use this situation in order to push her own narrative. It's just incredibly disgusting. She's a disgusting person. To think that any of the Republicans in office would actually stay and fight in Ukraine if that happened here, no, hilarious. Ted Cruz left Texas because it was cold. You know what Donald Trump did on January 6th? He went to the bunker. So these people, they want to sit there and cosplay heroes. And they're doing so while being the most pathetic cowards that you could ever imagine. Look, the situation here is this. War. War is hell. You have people that are dying. There are people that are losing their homes. And so maybe you should stop making light of their struggle. Stop glorifying war, in which a lot of these right-wingers do. And by the way, this also happens, in mainstream media, the glorification of war, the promoting of violence here and elsewhere from the right wing. It's just absolutely disgusting. And the conversation continues, as always, to be led by disgusting people. All right. Moving on. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there are a lot of Western pundits that have been in shock that something like this could ever happen in Europe, or what they're calling the civilized world, quote unquote. In fact, there was one CBS News correspondent, Charlie DeGatta, who said some rather racist things during his reporting from Kyiv. In fact, he's not the only one. There are others. Here's this compilation. Take a look.
But this isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European. I have to choose those words carefully, too.
I'm sorry. It's very emotional for me because I see European people with blue eyes and blonde hair being killed, children being killed every day with Putin's missiles and his helicopters and his rockets.
Now the unthinkable has happened to them. And this is not a developing third world nation. This is Europe.
What the fuck? Seriously, though. What the fuck? Oh, look, when that first reporter was like, I'm going to have to choose my words very carefully. As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, no, don't do it. You are not going to go in that direction. And that's what he did. And of course, it was because, look, he meant, well, white, civilized white people. Obviously, if they're white, they have to be civilized. And I can't believe that something like this would ever happen to a civilized country such as Ukraine. Dude, you realize that every single war, world war, by the way, every single world war that has happened, all 2 of them so far, has happened and centered in Europe. In Europe. So now look, those wars started in Europe, were primarily fought in Europe. Yes, they were fought in other places, hence the term World War. But this fighting was again, started in Europe, primarily focused in Europe, and there we are. Those wars were incredibly devastating. Millions of people died. The Holocaust, okay? And it's not just World War II. You want a more recent example? I got a few. In 1992, you had war in Bosnia, 100,000 dead, countless refugees. You had Sarajevo, that was siege. Before that, you had war in Croatia and Slovenia. You had Kosovo. There's also been conflicts involving Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. Oh, literally in the Caucasus region. That's where we get Caucasian. So I don't understand how any of these people could be foreign policy reporters when they are so completely ignorant of actual history, world history. Holy shitballs. This is so bad. This is so bad. Now, I've got more examples, by the way. Al Jazeera English anchor Peter Dobby said that it was, quote unquote, compelling that the refugees appeared to be middle-class people. Middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from the areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to. Holy shitballs! This is amazing to me because these are the same people, once again, that do not give a crap what happens in Yemen, for example. You have mass famine and death. And yet, you also have the numerous conflicts that are going on in Africa. Where are these people talking about this? Huh? Where's the endless coverage of what's going on in Yemen? Nobody cares. When it happens to white people, though, well, that's when you get the empathy. That's when you get mainstream media to actually pay attention and not fearmonger against others. Again, the only coverage that we see of places like Yemen or in the Middle East is like, oh my God, oh, Iran, very, very scary. We might have to launch missiles at Syria, blah, blah, blah. And that's what's going on. Now, here's the thing. I've got empathy enough for everyone. And we should all have empathy. But let's not pretend that it's not not extremely racist for you to acknowledge what's going on in Ukraine, but ignore every other conflict because, oh my God, it looks like me. They look like me. Well, yeah, but guess what? You should actually have empathy for people who don't look like you. And I've got all the empathy in the world for the people that are stuck in the middle of this horrible invasion in Ukraine. I also have empathy for the people in Ethiopia, in Yemen, in African countries, in Middle Eastern countries, Asian countries, everywhere. Because we're all human. We're all human beings here. Now, I mean, for them, though, it's almost just like war and violence like this, and they're legitimately shocked. Well, this doesn't happen to us. This happens to brown and black people. White people can never be refugees like these, unlike these Muslims that we're going to try to block from getting into our country. Now, here's the thing. I'm glad that Ukrainian refugees are being taken in. I'm glad that they're finding a place to go. But let's not pretend that if they were Muslims, that the response to this would be way different. That right-wingers in those countries, in European countries, where you do have right-wing leaders that were passing laws to make sure that Muslim refugees don't get into their country. Because we can't have those dangerous Muslims, but we can have the people from Ukraine. Again, I'm in solidarity. I support Ukrainians, but again, I support refugees that are Muslims as well. So now, I'm not the only one who's picked up on this. In fact, on MSNBC, journalist Mehdi Hassan, he talked about this, and he, brought on another person to talk about this, a Cairo-based journalist. Let's take a look at that.
When they say, oh, civilized cities, and in another clip, well-dressed people, and this is not the third world, they really mean white people, don't they? The reason they seem to want us to care more about Ukraine, and we should care about Ukraine, but not because they're white Europeans. That shouldn't be the reason we care about Ukraine.
Yeah, no, that's what's so disturbing in all of this. And in fact, not only that, it's trying to make an excuse why the West should get involved and embrace these refugees and help them. Listen, let's be clear. You should encourage and actually help refugees because they are fleeing a war. I don't know if you saw this. There was a op-ed today in the Telegraph. I think we have it. We'll put it up for our viewers to see. This was an op-ed in which the writer, Daniel Hannon, said that these people, the Ukrainians, they're like us. They watch Netflix. They have Instagram accounts. They read uncensored newspaper.
Wow.
And then goes on to say that war is no longer something visited upon impoverished and remote population. Oh no, it's happening to us here in Europe. And to your point, you're absolutely correct. Europe has had some of the worst human rights abuses and atrocities and wars in not just modern history, in all of history.
That right there. I mean, that's amazing. I couldn't get through watching that. I was like, they watch Netflix. They're just like us. They watch Netflix. What, you don't think black people also don't watch Netflix? You don't think people in Egypt watch Netflix? I'm pretty sure they do. But again, the whole point is, they're like us, but not like the people from the squalid and dirty third world. Wow. This is, it is a really Western-centric narrative. And a really, really good example, I think, of the effects of imperialism. Look, the effects of imperialism is that there's a lot of people in the West that view the non-Western world as dirty and undeveloped and poor. Now, how that relates to the imperialism is, look, a lot of that Western wealth, these wealthy countries, came from colonizing and exploiting the natural and human wealth of those countries in the non-developed or developing world. That's something that everybody seems to miss for some odd reason when it comes to, these cable news outlets, with the exception of Mehdi Hassan, who is incredibly right in pointing this out and pointing out the absolute racism. Now, of course, to go back to D'Agata here, Charlie D'Agata said, hey, look, I'm sorry, I apologize. Massive apology after the blowback. And I believe several others have apologized as well. But that's the thing. You really got to broaden your horizons here. If you're going to have any authority on talking about foreign policy, maybe it helps not to spread racist tropes about the developed world and to have some empathy about the situations that are going on in other places that we have had, a hand in making those terrible situations. Just a thought. Just a thought. All right. Move on. Final story. Their Egyptian series on Netflix. I know, right? It's insane. They're on Instagram. So they obviously, there are Instagram, people on Instagram from Middle Eastern countries all the time. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any freaking sense at all. But okay, anyway. Let's move on here. A last story for y'all. Okay. Here's an example of how we were right about the effects of stand your ground laws. So now, of course, stand your ground is where basically if you feel threatened, you can just shoot someone. Well, that's exactly what happened back in 2014. So now the reason that I'm bringing this case up now in 2022 is that here we have a case that has just made it through the courts with an acquittal based on stand your ground. So now this all happened back during an encounter in a movie theater where you had a retired Florida police captain who had fatally shot an unarmed man in a movie theater. So now this altercation happened between Curtis Reeves and Chad Olson. Now Reeves, 79 years old, was just acquitted by a jury on Friday following a 9-day trial in which Reeves testified that he had feared for his life when he had shot the 43-year-old Olson when they were on a movie date with their wives. So now Olson is a former serviceman, he's white, and Reeves is a former police officer. Actually, he was a former SWAT commander. So now the altercation began during previews for the movie of Lone Survivor. Now Olson apparently took out his cell phone, which again, if you're during the previews, you're not ruining the movie. I know there's the the unspoken rule or unwritten rule, or well, in some cases it is written, where you're encouraged to turn off your cell phone during the movie. Well, it's not the movie, it's the previews. And so totally right and fine to pull out his cell phone. However, this had sparked an argument between the two, and at the end of it, Olson was fatally struck in the chest with a single bullet from a .380 handgun. During testimony, Reeves argued that he had no choice to do so because I was fearing for my life. The argument, he was so scary. In fact, here's a quote: "He was so much above me and so full of rage that he was going to strike me with all the strength that he could put together. And my 71-year-old frame just couldn't take it." He had been out hunting the previous couple of days, or a couple of days prior. And so, bow hunting, by the way, and I think it was bow hunting. And either way, you're not that frail if you can go out hunting. But anyway, apparently he had feared for his life. He said, "I figured that this was the end of the line for me." Well, 71, I'd say he had a pretty good run. Reeves claimed that Olson, during the confrontation, had thrown his phone at him and struck him, although again, there's no evidence of that actually happening. Olson, however, did throw a very dangerous and deadly weapon, a bag of popcorn. Oh no, hey, look, you ever eaten popcorn? This stuff's like shrapnel. It'll rip you apart if you throw it so hard. Again, that's when Reeves fired a single shot from his gun. Now, Nicole Olson, who was with her husband, she testified that he had took out his phone during the previews to check on their 22-month-old daughter. The bullet that killed Chad nearly severed his wife's finger as she had tried to get him to sit down. Another witness testified that after firing the fatal shot, Reeves had muttered, "Throw popcorn in my face." Still, Reeves had maintained that Olson had apparently been ready to hit him. Quote, "I was completely defenseless." Well, apparently not. You had a gun. I've never encountered somebody exhibiting that amount of uncontrolled anger and rage. Now, was the guy mad? Yeah, apparently there were reports of Olson being very angry and dropping a lot of profanity, and even maybe looking like he was going to hit the guy. But then ended up throwing popcorn. And so how much of a danger was he in reality? Look, apparently that was enough for Reeves to claim that he had to stand his ground, the same defense that George Zimmerman, of course, had used against Trayvon Martin. Now, the jury, unfortunately, sided with Reeves, believing that Olson was a mortal danger to him. During closing arguments, defense attorney Richard Escobar had successfully argued that Olson made Reeves reasonably believe his life was in danger by turning, yelling, and reaching towards him. He said Reeves decided to shoot based on his nearly 30 years in law enforcement and hours of training on the justifiable use of deadly force. Escobar then said that Reeves didn't have to even wait until he was hit before defending himself. Reeves had, quote, "more knowledge, more experience, more study in that area than anyone in this courtroom. It's a dangerous world." Now, look, I have called out police training as, well, I mean, this is a great example of the effects of police training. When you're trained that everything is a deadly mortal threat, well, then you will treat everything as a deadly mortal threat. Even somebody who's, mad at you for you starting an argument with them about their cell phone, over a cell phone. Oh, well, I don't think you should have that cell phone. Hey, old man, go fuck yourself, right? I'm doing this, I'm doing that. No, I want you to put away your phone. Why? Because I command you. I have decreed, and I am the one with the gun. But you don't know it until I bite off more than I can chew, and then you throw popcorn at me. Well, that's okay. I'm going to return that with a bullet. And now you're dead. How do you like that? Throw coffee, or I'm sorry, not throw popcorn at me. Throw popcorn at me. Please, I dare you. I dare you. I'll kill you. And that's exactly what happened. And he got away with it. Well, of course. Of course. This is what we said was going to happen with laws like Stand Your Ground. This is what's going to happen. Now anybody can pull a gun and shoot someone else in any situation that involves any sort of argument. A traffic argument? Argument over something stupid? Hey, you took my place in line. Now I'm going to shoot you. You looked at your cell phone during the previews and I started an argument with you. Well, now I feel threatened because you argued back and now I can shoot you. Now I can murder you. And I can get away with it. That's what Stand Your Ground does. That's what happens when you have these types of laws in place. Now, in these places, you have people that are literally a hair trigger away from murdering you and getting away with it over ridiculous small things. And they are small things. No matter who is right in the argument, the correct answer is not to murder the other guy, even if they throw popcorn. Popcorn is not a deadly weapon, but a gun is. But a gun is. That's the situation we find ourselves in. If you're living in Florida, God, I don't know how you could stand living in Florida. I don't know how you can stand it. I don't know how you can survive in that place, knowing that anybody, it doesn't matter anyone, if you have a problem with anyone and you say something, they can murder you if you have an argument. Not at all. The whole place is just devolving into absolute insanity with these stupid, short-sighted, ridiculous bullshit laws. All right. God damn it. Florida. What the fuck, Florida? Okay. All right. Look, that's all I got for you today. Just going to read some super chats real quick before I head out. And by the way, if you haven't already, please like and share the stream. It's very, very important that you do so. Check out the videos, of course, later. If you missed any part of the show, which you did not want to miss, by the way, because it was a fantastic show today. All right. Yeah, super chats here. Let's go to Dango Bango says, blue-eyed, blonde, civilized, Nazi talking points. Yeah, exactly, Nazi talking points. Breaking news, Russian logistics in Ukraine are so bad they are forced to use taco trucks. I'm going to have to look at that. Because if that's true, that's kind of funny. It just makes me think of if Joe Biden wins, there's going to be taco trucks on every corner. Every single corner. Yes, bring on the taco trucks. I love them. Daniel Bagel also says, no, wait, dog, megaphone. Yeah, it's not a dog whistle. It's a megaphone. Brasher Dragon says, shitballs is my favorite word when I'm going. Yeah. Oh, I love that word. I use it too much. Virginia Thomas, a.k.a. S. Dragon, says, very correctly, they didn't care about Puerto Rico that much, and they're a part of us. Yeah, Puerto Rican people are literally citizens of the United States citizens. And they do not get protected by the right. The right considers them Donald Trump. Oh, it's an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. We'll help them, but they have this laziness. They're very lazy. The entitlement mentality. No, they're literally part of the United States. Racism rots the brain. Swear to God. I don't know what it is, but it rots your brain. They have brain worms. Maridano, thank you so much for the very kind $2. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. Okay. All right. That's it. I'm out of time. Let's find a place to raid here. Thank you for the new follows, by the way. Zooey0121, please hit the follow button if you're on Twitch. Helps us out, as always. And, of course, subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook as well, if you haven't already. Even the haters. Oh, trust me, I got so many haters now on Facebook. Unlike YouTube, the Facebook algorithm actually does share your videos with a wider audience. And that includes a lot of right-wingers. And I look at some of the comments in Facebook, I'm like, holy shit. Wow, I haven't been hated on that much for that long. Holy crap. Kind of refreshing. I'm getting a new audience. Even if it is some people who despise me. But it is what it is. All right. Anyway, and Reddit too? I don't know. How's the Republican Party not labeled a hate group? Asks Hanko Bangle. Didn't they try to label like white supremacy or something about white supremacy rhetoric, and the Republican Party's like, well, if you, it's banning on social media. That's right. We're gonna ban people on social media who do like this hate speech. Well, they couldn't because then they would ban a lot of Republicans or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I'd have to go back and look at that story. Twitch. Let's get back to raiding on Twitch. We are going to raid into. This isn't somebody that I have raided into much. Let's raid into Dylan Burns, who seems to be covering the UN, talking about Ukraine. So we'll do that. Thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great night.
I will eat your ass.
It's like a shark tornado, except for quicker.
Mike Pence.
Oh no!
Tolerate. Sexual anarchy.
Obama.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.
Disappointed.